And I'm still unable to access the CCI YouTube channel, but I'm going to set one up of our own if Ellen isn't participating anymore.
Is Ellen not available this evening?
She doesn't seem to be very available in general.
Oh.
Well,
Virginia, are
she's
you
in
recording?
Florida. She's in Florida.
Yeah, right.
She's probably at Disney World.
I don't think she's in that part of Florida.
No comment.
Okay, Virginia, are you recording?
Yes.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am Bruce Bartlett, Chair of the Washington County Committee for Citizen Community, CCI, the Committee for Community Involvement, welcoming you to the April 2023 meeting. We have Chair Catherine Harrington joining us soon. And until then, let's do the acceptance of the last month's meeting minutes. Any discussion on the Gretchen?
Bruce, I sent you a copy. I found an error in the minutes that I had missed first go round, and Christina said she was taking care of it. So I'm
Good.
assuming that change has been made.
Okay.
Okay.
Virginia, did you have something?
Just that we're not doing Facebook anymore. We're doing YouTube.
That's been updated on the minutes.
And I sent you the link for the March YouTube meeting.
Very good. Thanks to CPO1 for doing that.
With that, I move approval of the minutes. We can have the motion before we finish discussion.
I second.
Any more discussion? Well, with appreciation for Christina taking good minutes, let's have a show of hands of everybody who approves it. 1, 2, 3, 4. Richard Smith, we should make it. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
Is Jim going to join us?
7, 8. I think it's 8 people. Okay, so we got Darcy and Richard Smith. Anybody else in the Lyles Garcia?
Is Lyles a CCI member, or is he just joining in?
Well, that's a good question. We could deputize him.
He could fight somebody for the honor.
Okay, so I assume that raised hands are voting. So I had 9 to anybody opposed to the minutes.
I haven't read them yet.
Okay,
I thought I saw something wrong with it, but I haven't read them yet. And I can't find them right now.
so I suggest that anybody that finds little things with the minutes, send them to Christina. But in going through them, it captured the gist of the meeting really well, and I'm happy. So we approved the minutes. And
Mary Lou has a question.
sure. Oh, Mary Lou.
The chat's disabled, so I can't write anything.
You're a participant because the 2 CPO reps are already here.
The what? I'm taking Fran's place. I'm the alternate.
Okay.
Mary
Well-
Lou, you just have to accept the promotion to panelist. Something should pop up on your screen.
She's
Yeah.
up there now.
There you go.
But I think she was asking about chat. Is the chat feature disabled?
No, you have to click on it at the bottom of the screen.
Well, I am texting the chair. Can you make it to the CCI meeting now? Question mark. Okay. since we don't seem to have our featured speaker, let's go ahead and have a significant natural resources subcommittee report.
I'm
So,
not even on here now.
is that Jill? Oh,
Disappeared from this.
well, Mary Lou, I see, is that you talking? I see you.
Yeah,
You have
I-
you have a plate.
there we go. There we go. I just couldn't see the screen with all you people smiling faces. But now I can.
Very good. Jim and Jill, you want to take it away on the SNR subcommittee?
Sure, I can start. I'm Jill Warren, CPO4M, and I just want to make an announcement that LCDC, Land Conservation Development Commission, is going to hold a vote on the 20th, which is day after tomorrow, at 1 p.m. And they're going to vote to impose an injunction on Washington County to stop the development applications in significant natural resource areas.
Yay.
So this is following the recommendations of a hearings officer. There was a contested case hearing on this, and the hearings officer recommended this. So we'll see how it comes out. It's interesting. LCDC is Land Conservation and Development Commission. When the word conservation comes first, I'm sure they did that for a reason. So we're going to hopefully get some conservation, preservation coming out of
What development is it?
this.
It's at 1 o'clock on the
20th.
Oh.
And I was just going through the LCDC announcement, the agenda, but I don't see the Zoom link to watch the meeting.
Would somebody get that and send it to the rest of us?
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll be glad to do that.
Which development is specifically is it?
It's not a specific development, Virginia. This is an enforcement order.
Ah, okay.
This is an enforcement order that would affect all of the proposals that are going to infringe upon significant natural resource areas. We have found that the county's been going ahead and approving things even after
Geez.
previous enforcement order. So we feel that they need to get their clear and objective standards in shape before they start doing more. I mean, the law says that they should protect, not only were they supposed to inventory the significant natural resource areas, but they're also supposed to protect them. And
I wonder if that would affect the gas station in a wetland. No, Mary?
Mary, what do you got?
It won't protect the gas station in a wetland because the gas station is outside the significant natural resource area.
Ah,
So my question is it's going to a vote, but nobody knows for sure how that vote is going to go at this point.
correct.
They could agree not to impose the injunction.
Correct.
do you
Okay,
think our attendance at the meeting will be good or bad or whatever?
It's really the people who are on record. They're the ones that can really testify. There's a lot that's happened already on this subject. It's not per se a popularity contest. They have to follow the law, and the hearings officer has recommended. And it's a very strong 14-page. I think we sent it out a month ago. We sent out the hearings officer recommendations, and it was very strong. So it culminates on Thursday at 1 o'clock. It's item number 6 on their agenda. And what it says here is from the LCDC packet, it says the commission will consider the hearings officer's draft findings regarding an enforcement order against Washington County for not having clear and objective standards, protecting significant natural resource areas, and will make a decision whether to issue an enforcement order, and if so, the terms of that order. So they haven't decided. It'll be an interesting discussion there. But we've done this for years. We've been pursuing the Land Use Board of Appeals and LCDC for years. I see Gretchen has a hand up.
Yeah, my question is, Jim, I know our CPO, our steering committee has been discussing this issue a lot recently. Would it be of assistance for other CPOs to be in attendance and kind of go rah rah?
I don't
You know
think,
what I mean?
We don't think so. I mean, it'd be good to be there, but I don't think there's really an opportunity for the cheerleading.
Okay.
They're mostly going to be discussing, the details of the enforcement order and how it should work and how long it should be. And it's a difficult issue. Clear and objective standards are not going to be easy to come up with. So one of the thoughts, and we did last month, this group unanimously approved sending a letter to LCDC. But actually, the letter ended up going to the Board of Commissioners and telling them that we support the hearings officer's recommendations. The LCDC really cannot take new testimony on this. It's what's on the record already, and the parties that are already on record are the parties that matter.
Very good. Well, anything else on the SNR subcommittee?
Yeah, we met last week. We have plenty to go through. One of the things I wanted to comment on that was in the packet here for tonight for the agenda that was put together by the county, they talk about what their plans are, but they don't use the word protect. The word protect, back when the law was set out in 1971, the law for Goal 5 was to inventory the significant natural resources and protect them. And the county's verbiage these days isn't using the word protect. And that's just something that I've noticed, and I'll be continue to be testifying about as we go through the process here. But the state website says to protect and plan for significant natural resources, the local governments are asked to create a number of inventories, and then they decided on a level of protection appropriate for each resource and appropriate codes to put their policies into effect. Resource sites are assessed and significant sites are protected. So one of the things they seem to be emphasizing is their ESEE, economic, social, environmental assessments. And that all seems to be development oriented. Whereas I think we need to have something that's oriented towards wildlife, because that's what we're trying to protect here. So some of the discussion will be going towards the economic impact of things on that order. And from my point of view, we're trying to speak up for wildlife. At least CPO4M is, and we've been successful in the past. So we did have a meeting. We did have a meeting last week, and we talked about all the wildlife we'd seen, many different bits of wildlife. We talked about the Clean Water Services project manager. Oh, okay, hold it, Mary. I see you got your hands up.
Can we come back to this because Catherine is here now, and
I was hoping to wrap up a kind of snappy SNR report.
okay.
So,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I don't have it very snappy, Bruce. We had a meeting, so I'd be glad to defer and go to the chair.
Sure. Thanks.
We can come back to this later.
Well, I think welcome, Chair Catherine Harrington. Thank you for visiting us. We'll take a half hour of your time that you generously offered, and then schedule another visit for a more wide-ranging conversation sometime in the future. And so I believe the first question was for you to share your thoughts on the the SNR work that the county is now doing. And Fran Warren is on the task force that is looking at the revisions, and she isn't here, but you are. So welcome, Chair Harrington.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you to all members of the CCI and others who may be attending this Zoom meeting. I'm sorry I'm a few minutes late. I frankly lost track of time, so thank you, Bruce, for pinging me. With regard to the SNR work. I am looking forward to the completion of the study by our team and having them report out on that to us and having us go from there. I don't have any presupposed notion about what the recommendations will be. I am just looking forward to the work going through the process and seeing what they come up with so that hopefully we can have an ordinance and whatever habitat protection requirements, guidelines, so that we can move forward. So I only stand to learn more from that work. So I joined the Zoom just as Jim Long was speaking about the LCDC orders and remands and all of that. I just want us to get the work done. This was work that was underway before I was on the county commission. And so those of us who just joined the commission then, we picked up the work that was going on and went from there. So it's time to make sure that we're adopting the appropriate ordinances and requirements that will meet LCDC's muster. So I don't know what that form will be yet. So we'll see what happens. And I'm not trying to talk in circles here. It's just, I honestly don't know what the work from staff will produce and how we move forward with that.
Well, thank you.
And thank you for your work on the service level agreement. As you had heard me mention previously, perhaps I had not seen that work. And so seeing the information from you, I was able to turn to our management and concretely say, okay, this is the second time I've been interested in finding out what that is. And so I had the opportunity to read it as I was headed to the East Coast.
Well, we're pretty satisfied with the way that turned out as an interim measure. So.
And, you know, one thing that I'm interested in learning more from our staff is, you know, where we are today in 2023 is different than where we thought we would be back in, well, I'll go as far back as 2020. You know, the delay of the 2020 census, and then you know, certainly having the community detour and impact of COVID, but also with new management, a new senior leadership team, as well as a new facilities manager. We've had the opportunity to learn an awful lot over these last 3 years about what the state of Washington County, your local government, is. And we continue to learn more each month. And we are trying to do our best to put our best foot forward so that we are performing as a healthy and more efficient, effective Washington County. We really have a set of incredible employees who are committed in public service, and we're trying to do a better job of making sure they have effective tools to do that job. I've learned a lot over the last couple of years, but more so the last this most present year of how old our systems are. And because of that, we can't get the kind of reports that we would like to figure out how we can do things better for our community. So the board has asked our staff to give us some further information. Some of it will come through as part of our budget conversations. We're trying to get a better handle, for example, on what our community service levels are. Not unlike your service level agreement for the CCI. What are we doing? What are we able to fulfill for the shared services we have from the state? Which ones are mandated? Which ones are discretionary? For the ones that are mandated from the state, how much of the funding is provided by the state for those mandated services? Where is there the gap between what the state funds and what the state expects us to do? So, which means that's a gap we have to make up for. And then there are a bunch of community needs. You all have heard me talk about community needs while I was campaigning for this position. And here I sit over 4 years, 5 years later, and I still am trying to wrap my head around how we're able to meet community need, all the while that community needs continue to evolve and change. So we're learning a lot, and we're learning together. That's one reason why I'm pleased that we are able to provide forums for you to be on the journey with us. We're having 2 budget committee orientations, one this Thursday night, one next Thursday night. And those are fully public meetings. You can join us in person, you can join us by Zoom. And since they're public meetings, you'll be able to watch them later at your leisure. The budget will be released, I think it's next Thursday, the 27th. Yep. And a week from Thursday, the first full budget meeting where the budget will be presented is May 8th. And you may be familiar with how we essentially have 3 sets of budget committees. There's the general Washington County budget, as well as Service District Lighting number 1. Then there's ESPD and URMD together. And then there's the North Bethany Service District for roads. And last year, well, the last couple of years, 2 years ago, we had really what I consider a great turnout for the public hearing to adopt the budget. Then last year, we decided to make it that much easier for people to provide comments. So we have allowed public comment in each and every budget committee meeting. We're doing that again this year. So you don't have to wait for any specific budget committee meeting. So it's a matter of your being available, you're having interest, and please come talk to us as you are best available. Our team will collect questions all through that process, and we'll all get the answers together. I'm sorry, I got a little bit off track there.
Well, that's okay. No, that's completely germane, and we need it. The strategic plan discussion.
Oh yes, I was talking about re-envisioning, wasn't I? I'm looking forward to better understanding the process for re-envisioning the CPOs at an upcoming quarterly update from our Office of equity and community engagement, and learning more there. And then for the county strategic plan, we've been committed all along to wanting to have a quite extensive community strategic plan. So a process where all of you are invited, engaged in that. I've always imagined it as a multi-year, multi-pronged approach, and our team has been investigating best known practices in community strategic plan development. And we recognize that we need to secure some consultant resources in terms of how to go best about this with our community groups. Towards that end, we are going to be publishing a request for proposal, and we asked our advisory council on racial equity to help us review the draft from staff for that request for proposals, so that we can ensure that the groups that are generally historically underserved by government will be on the journey as well. All the while, we recognize that, as you know, we had some cuts in our budget last year, and we had to take one-time pauses on certain investments, as well as one-time pauses on hiring for the next year. So we did that, and we got through last year, or what is currently this budget year, with real being very strategic about where we've added staff in different departments, so that we would continue to operate in the black. So when Ms. Angie started to develop the proposed budget for this next fiscal year, she added all those things back in because they were only proposed as one-time pauses or one-time tactics. And that meant that just starting this proposed budget, we were $25 million. We were left with a $25 million gap between our expenses and our revenues. So, and our forecast for the last few budget years had noted that there was a forecast of our costs and our expenses being very close to one another and then crossing over. So what has been further revealed is that we do have structural problems in our budget, that we've been relying upon one-time funding, specifically using dollars from gain share to shore up the general fund, and that can't be sustained. In addition to our continuing to have population growth and needs to cover service growth, some of which is required either by state mandates, as there have been increasing more mandates, and as well as our own service level formulas for things like law enforcement patrols. So what it means is the board wants to have a conversation amongst itself of the current strategic plan, and to ask ourselves the question, are we going to continue to put together budgets with the same level, the same strategic plan, or are there some changes that we want to put in place until such time as we have the full-throated, if I could call it that, community strategic plan. That's a lot of words, a lot of explanation for a program that is not at all constructed. So we have been pretty heads down in terms of getting the normal work done, as well as trying to provide appropriate direction to Ms. Angie for this next proposed budget. So I don't see us knowing when we're going to have that board level conversation or just a board look at the strategic plan until sometime in the third calendar quarter. With everything we've got going on, I don't see it happening till at a September, October kind of timeframe.
Good, that's helpful information. I've been wondering, how citizens can be involved, and I think all of the CCI members are willing to contribute, but you're saying that we won't know what the overall process is until the third quarter.
So what I'll have to look back at, we had a work session on this topic, and then we had within a week, less than a week, we had a meeting with the Advisory Council on Racial Equity, ACRE, and we had directed in the work session to our staff to have this board level conversation, and then while we continue to plan the longer term, so that our board level conversation would help inform the next couple of budget years. And so we have, with that ACRE presentation, we had a better graphic that shows these two legs and then coming together. But what I'm not able to recall at this juncture, Bruce, and I'm sorry, I don't know for sure the timing of that, but I don't think so. Let me take it as an AR to get back to you, CCI, with that, so that it's clearer. Okay.
Yeah. One of the things that the CCI has discussed is the urban unincorporated area, and the it's not going away as near as we can tell. It might not get a lot bigger, but rather than the strategic plan saying that cities are the logical service providers, the county is now a mandatory service provider to the UUA, in spite of it being sort of orthogonal to the traditional county role. So we'll look forward to seeing how the board addresses the unincorporated urban area.
Yeah, I'm going to sound like a broken record on this one, aren't I? Where
no, I mean, I'm just acknowledging that is one of the CCI's concerns, and you don't have to address it unless you have something you want to say.
There isn't anything new for me to say. Is the point? Yeah.
Yeah. So I am curious. Moving on to the last question, so we can get you onto your evening. The Transition Planning Task Force in 2016 created a report, which, as I read it, still has a lot of good substance to it, and I haven't been seeing a lot of reference to that by county staff. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on using the transition plan that had a lot of effort go into it. Did you have a chance to look through it at all to see if it felt like there was useful meat in it to guide the re-envisioning process?
Well, this is where I think there are a few things that come together, right? I just got access to the service level agreement and have had the opportunity to read that. I haven't read that. I haven't reread the 2016 report since 2019. Okay.
Okay.
There's that to come back to. That CPO re-envisioning topic, I believe, is coming back to the board sometime in May. But I don't know the specific date yet in our rolling agenda. But also, I would want to hear more from our staff about, so what are their plans? You are right that the CCI, all of you, as some of you as longtime leaders, have put in a lot of time and energy in that prior report and since. And so I think it deserves some discussion. And I think it would benefit the board talking with staff, hearing more from them about what approach they're thinking, given that we're asking them to do a few different things, and then figuring out a course together. I don't think it is useful for the board and staff to be thinking of all of this by itself. I think Commissioner Treese and I had the opportunity. We had an invitation from some CPO7 folks to come in and have a special meeting with them. And we understand the role of CPOs and the how it is there for people who can and want to be involved, and how can we forge a course together. So I think we're going to learn more together over the next couple of months about what those service levels are, what our needs are, and how can we braid it all together into a brighter future.
Well, I think that right there is a good concluding remark. Do any CCI members have a clarifying question you'd like to ask? Gretchen.
Oops, you're on mute, Gretchen. And we all do it. Don't worry about it.
In my next life, I will never do that. I don't know if you're aware that CCI has created a subcommittee that is specifically to work on the re-envisioning process. And I'm not expecting an answer, but I would be interested in your approach to how the subcommittee can work with staff to work on specifically issues of citizen involvement from the standpoint, we have a lot of history. We might have some good ideas. The other question that I have, your comment about budgets, I know about that from having served on 2 different city councils. Maybe, and I know some of the other CPOs will have a conniption fit when I say this, maybe it should be considered of whether the county should take a pro-annexation position. I'm not saying yes or no, or maybe it's time to look at that issue again, because it's been a long time ago that policy was made and then sort of lingered. And a lot of annexations didn't happen except down in South County. So not expecting any answers. I'm just asking you to think about those thoughts and maybe get back to us at some point.
Would any of you be interested in my talking about annexation for a few minutes?
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
You can always, it's your meeting, so you can give me a hook anytime. I just want to acknowledge that there are some places where the annexation may make more sense than others. I mean, clearly, as our current budget for this current fiscal year shows, and that's before we go into this next proposed budget, the county doesn't have the resources to do everything, right? And I think all parts of Washington County deserve to be healthy, vibrant communities, and we're not able to service all of the areas with that same level of due diligence. But I also would not want us to try and use one technique in all places, right? In all of the urban unincorporated areas. Nor would I want to require cities to take on areas if they're not ready, able, and willing as well. So it's, I'm not a fan of using the word complex. There's just a lot to it, and it deserves some good open conversations to figure out what might be a productive path for the community, short-term and long-term. Long-term, I know short-term, we're already not doing a satisfactory job for all the unincorporated areas, right? And for another 2-3 years, which is our sight line for our current revenue and expenditure situation, it's not going to get any better or easier. I want to give credit to Clackamas County Chair Tootie Smith for ingraining in me, if there's one thing that all 36 counties could do and lobby for at the state legislature, it's no more unfunded mandates, because they've been happening, and the number of things that we are required to do has only increased year over year on my time on the county commission. And our property tax revenue to cover those responsibilities and the state resources to cover all those responsibilities does not add up. So that's why we're really trying to get a first decent picture of our service levels this budget year. Well, it'll be a starting point, right? Just like last year with our first year of the budget equity tool, it's a baseline by which we can discuss, measure, assess, and go from there. So I'm looking forward to learning more. So,
Mary, you got your hand up.
I do. And I'd like to follow up with Catherine's comment about not wanting to require cities that aren't ready to annex areas to have them move forward. But I wonder, there's cities who are expanding the urban growth boundary and expanding their city that way as opposed to annexation. And
yeah, that's a good point.
And to me, it's like, you know, they're not ready because their interests are with that new land. So just a comment and thought.
Yep. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yep.
All right. Well, we appreciate you taking the time, especially on East Coast time. It's getting close to 11 o'clock where you are. I think we can cut off comments. If you have any closing remarks, that's fine. We feel complete right now, and we'll have you back when you're in the same time zone we are.
Well,
Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you for having me. I hope I provided you with on a set of honest information. I wouldn't call them all answers, but honest, sincere responses to your questions. I invite your questions, and please do continue to invite me and my colleagues back. I appreciate hearing from you.
Well, we appreciate hearing from you. So thank you very much.
Have a good night. Keep up the good work. Bye-bye.
Well, I would like to thank all the CCI members for your polite attention to the chair's visit to us. And we will have her back with a more demanding set of answers, I'm sure, in the future. So moving ahead, is there anything more the Significant Natural Resources Subcommittee would like to say about their work or what's coming up in the future?
Yes, we talked about a number of things. One of the things we talked about most about is mitigation. And one of our members had actually met with the project manager at Clean Water Services, and she came away, and I'm not sure we can quote, but it's a smoke and mirrors thing where they set up mitigation, but then they kind of walk away with it. There's little accountability as to how things happen. So when things get set out, when mitigation sets out, it's fine for a few years. But then if a new group comes in, whether it's a homeowners association or other people, they may change and decide to cut down the trees that were planted or one thing or another. So we need to work in some ways to have some complaint-driven attention and enforcement, so there's not an intentional degradation of properties. Fran was talking about intertwine, and the state of Washington has new guidelines that ODFW is about to use also, whereas instead of a ratio of 6-to-1 plantings, they're going to use 8-to-1 plantings with 5 to 10 years to follow up. And again, we're still looking to try and get clear and objective standards on these. There needs to be transparency in the mitigation bank, and particularly where mitigation happens elsewhere. Our CPO and the committee is in favor of local mitigation. We don't want to necessarily send the wildlife out 10 miles out to Jackson Bottom out south of Hillsborough. We want local mitigation to be try and set up when possible so that the wildlife has opportunities locally to habitat, to live. So one of the things we really are looking at with this next thing is the continuation of our work. I mean, it's kind of like Bruce was saying with the transition report that he and I were on 6, 7, 8 years ago that hasn't been paid much attention to. When they set out mitigation, we need to be able to follow through on it so that we can see that it's enforced and that it's in history, that it's in the books. Not necessarily that it can't ever change, but that it's there for a reason and people know that it's there for a reason. I mean, for example, there's a park in Tigard, the Dirksen Nature Park, and recently they've been paving it over, which is not really good for nature. So things have changed, and just because a committee changes, they need to know what went into the decisions when it was originally set out to have protections in place. So that's one of the things we talked about. So there is word that if the Land Conservation and Development Commission on Thursday, if they decide to issue an enforcement order, that there might be a celebration after that, because we've been working on this for years. So keep tuned. I will be looking for, and I will be calling the LCDC executive office tomorrow to get the link, Bruce, so that we can send it out to everybody, for anybody who's interested in tuning in for the half hour, 45 minutes that they'll have this on their agenda. But it is interesting to see how a state commission works on a matter like this. So I will get that, and I'll send it to you, or I'll send it to Christina, or we'll get it out one way or another. So if people put it on their calendar, 1 o'clock on Thursday, they might be able to see how things work at the state level to do a little bit of enforcement to the county, which obviously we've read did not pay much attention to protecting significant natural wildlife areas.
Jim, are there any jurisdictions that you're aware of that have exemplary SNR codes that are effective?
We had looked at this a few years ago when the whole clear and objective concept came out, and the only one I can remember that had anything set, and I don't have the specifics, was Wilsonville as far as a local one, but this is new territory, Bruce, and what I would like to encourage is for the county to take its time to do the right thing and to set a precedent so that it can be used statewide, so that development doesn't just happen and forget about the wildlife. One of the things we've been talking about recently is this diversity, equity, inclusion. The Community Engagement Office and their terms diversity, equity, inclusion. that also applies to wildlife. Wildlife was here before we were, and we need to recognize that even though they don't pay taxes and they can't speak for themselves, we need to step up and protect their habitat. And that's what we've been trying to do for years now. So I'm sure that if Fran was here, she'd be echoing some of these thoughts.
Yeah. Paul, you've had your hand up.
Yes, you use the word mitigation, and I'm thinking, what does that really mean? Are we talking about restoration of habitat or creating new habitat to accommodate what was there and now is not because of past actions? So when you use the term mitigation, I'm a little bit confused.
As I said, Joanne, who's on our SNR committee, she came away after talking with the Clean Water Service project manager using the word smoke and mirrors. Mitigation's been used for a long time and it's not very well defined. Is it new places, or is it we're going to enhance and preserve other places that the wildlife can go to? There's some good questions, and thank you, Paul, for bringing that up. There's a lot of unclear things that happen with mitigation. We want to get that cleared up somehow. Another question?
Yeah, Mary Lou.
Mary Lou?
Yeah, I've just got a comment, I think. Maybe there's a question attached to it, but I just took a field trip over to the Braxton easement, part of the Columbia Land Trust property in CPO 4K. And apparently that CPO is not functioning at the moment, but somebody needs to come to the defense of that area, that Rivermead area, because it's going to be swallowed up by King City all the way to Roy Rogers Road.
Mary Lou,
Yeah.
it's being held. There's been lots of action going on. Yes, Kathy has not been able to have meetings, but the steering committee has been actively involved, and we're working with the city of King City to try to deal with issues. So it's happening.
Okay.
There's been a lot of smoke, but there's things going on.
Then the neighbors are,
I know the neighbors. I know.
Understandably concerned. And so
I personally founded 4K and invited at Rivermead to be part of the CPO. So I've been through this for the last almost 25 years. So
I'm just telling you.
I know.
I'm just
Gretchen,
telling you.
would you let Mary Lou
there was
speak?
any discussions, but that's not the point of this meeting.
I'm just trying to explain that they have resorted to gather up help from nonprofits everywhere, including Tree Keepers of Washington County, including
Yes.
1,000 Friends of Oregon,
Yes,
including
they have
Tualatin.
contacted everybody they could think of.
Well, that's right, because I don't know if you have hiked in that area, but it's already being devastated by the development in Bull Mountain. And
Yes.
so
That's the reason that Rivermead originally, and my immediate neighborhood, because I lived off 131st, why we formed the CPO in the late 90s. So I'm very aware of the problem. I had flooding at my house. So we need to get back to the meeting.
Well, I thought this was the point of the meeting, was
Yes.
to discuss
It
the
is.
SNRs and what to do about preserving them.
Well, so I suggest that Gretchen, you and Mary Lou have a side conversation
Yeah.
to discuss the particulars, and maybe Jill or Jim join in, so that so that Mary Lou's concerns can be incorporated.
They're not going to be assuaged, but I'd be glad to talk to her.
Okay.
Well,
very good.
I'd rather have a positive attitude happening on this. And indeed, 4K and particularly about 4B, the Bull Mountain CPO is inactive at this moment.
Yes.
And we should be concerned about that because there is a lot of development happening. And
Yes.
we try and look at some of their development applications, but we don't have time to go through it all as much as we'd like to.
Well, several of us tried to get 4B going again. I also lived up there at one point, and that has been very difficult. Our problem is down here is we've had people with health issues and residents, family members. So things have just been kind of in abeyance in terms of our formal meeting structure, but we'll get that going again. But
Very good.
I just
Virginia,
had a
you got your
meeting
hand-
with Mike Meyer for 2 hours last week. So I'm very aware of what's going on, Mary Lou. So thank you for your comment. I'll be glad to talk to you offline.
Okay, very good. Virginia, you got your hand up. And you're muted.
Oh, good, I get to speak. So I did post something in the chat, but Jim, as much as I love wildlife, it doesn't appeal to everyone. And I believe that an equally important part of protecting natural areas is their environmental services to all of us, of cleaning the water, cleaning the air, giving us green spaces to preserve our mental health, and so on and so forth. And if you just emphasize wildlife, the people who think it's something you can go out and shoot are not going to be sympathetic to you. So I really would encourage you to broaden your appeal to people who can understand. And I mean, maybe those same people don't understand the importance of environmental services either, but it wouldn't hurt to include that.
So people are
Thank you. That's a good
wildlife
comment.
too. People are wildlife too. Mary, what do you got?
I guess a comment to Mary Lou, and it's something that we struggle with in our CPO as well. It's like when these big projects come up, it isn't really the leadership of the CPO that is responsible for following through. It's a group of citizens within that CPO that then can band together. And I think, what is happening by reaching out to river keepers, reaching out to the tree group, they're absolutely doing the right thing in reaching out to groups who have a real interest in that particular subject. But it's a real struggle for CPO leadership to deal with specific projects. It's got to be people that are really, I mean, with our CPO, we had a gas station that was put in and approved right next to a wetland. And we had somebody that came in from multiple people. They set up a Facebook page. They set up, a blog that went out to people. They gathered addresses, and it absolutely was a group of people who were not really CPO leaders, but had a real interest and focus on dealing with this. And I think this is something that maybe gets lost with community members, that you can't just go to your leaders and have the leaders solve the problem for you. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. As somebody who has been a leader, I have to pick and choose what things I get involved in because I'd be my personal life would disappear. And so we rely on focus groups of citizens sort of being subcommittees of CPOs, if you will. We don't really have a formal subcommittee process for CPOs, but in essence, that's what they are. And so.
Well, that's how tree keepers got involved, is because the community members reached out to us and said, is there anything you can do, And so the same thing with Thousand Friends of Oregon and Tualatin River Keepers. The Tualatin River keeper people are seriously considered worried because of the silting that is coming from Bull Mountain down through the Columbia Land Trust property and then eventually ending up through the creeks into the Tualatin River. And that is not good. So,
Mary Lou,
yes,
Riverkeepers were on the experts, I can never remember the term, committee when the concept plan was going through. So they have been involved since before anything was even discussed. We all know about the problem of what water has this funny habit of going downhill. Have you noticed that? You were
Well,
supposed to smile. You were
Yeah.
supposed to smile, Mary Lou.
thing-
I'm trying to,
Okay,
we're
so
all in,
I'm
so
just,
let's
I'm
talk
just,
offline,
I'm just,
okay?
I'm just responding to Mary's comment. That's all.
okay, so one of the things that CPO leaders can do is invite involved groups to bring a proposed motion to the CPO for the CPO to vote on, and then the CPO can forward it on behalf of the group to the Board of County Commissioners or whatever the appropriate jurisdiction is. So that is the role that the CPO, you can pretty much count on CPO as doing, getting the CPO leaders to sort of pick up swords and march along with you is asking a bit much. But having motions come before the CPO is a very good thing. I don't know how effective it is, but it is something that the CPOs have historically done. So
There isn't
thank
a
you. Thank you
CPO.
for your concern. I really appreciate anybody who's paying attention to anything these days. Virginia, what do you got?
Sorry. Becky left saying that she didn't like the rudeness, and I don't understand that. I don't know who was being rude to who. Was it me?
No.
Who
No.
was being rude to who? What did we do to offend her? I don't understand. I sent her an email.
Well, I mean, Gretchen and Mary Lou had a kind of a strained conversation, but I would prefer to not go into it unless everybody insists on it.
No,
What
I
would
just
like
wanted to
do-
be sure it wasn't me, because
No,
I've been
no.
accused of that before, and I thought I was controlling myself.
Well, you know, there's various degrees of controlling oneself. So I would like to move on to the
That was rude.
well, speaking from somebody who has made efforts to control myself, there's various degrees. So moving ahead to the CPR subcommittee, the CPO program re-envisioning. I have a paper that I will send out to the subcommittee after this meeting with comments about the strategic plan. One of the things that you'll learn if you read through the OEICE quarterly report that will be presented on May 9th is that they are decoupling the CPO re-envisioning program from the strategic plan. And I think that makes a lot of sense. As Catherine was saying, the strategic plan is going to be a longer term process, and I don't think we should gate any re-envisioning off of the strategic plan. That said, my comment about the urban unincorporated area and then the subsequent conversation about annexation is all things that we can have in a paper on the subject. And so I have a question. If I send out a Word document, and also, is that enough, or should a Google Doc also be created with access for everybody to comment on it? What's kind of popcorn? What's an effective way of reviewing documents?
Google Docs. Get
Okay.
used to it.
Send it in PDF.
In PDF.
You
Yes.
can't make comments on a PDF, Gretchen.
Comment, well, some of us cannot do Google Docs. Some of us
Okay.
can handle a PDF and we can make comments to send back. It doesn't, I don't like editing other people's work without having the notes on the side. That's
Okay.
Well,
me.
do all three.
Okay, very good. Mary, what do you got? Once you unmute.
Yeah. Are you talking about sending this document to the CPR committee first?
First.
and then releasing it to the wider
To the,
audience?
yeah, to the unruly general.
Yeah, yeah. And I think with the CPR committee, it's probably okay if you just do a Word doc,
Okay. Okay.
because that works for you, doesn't it, Gretchen?
Yes, that works. That works very well for me.
All right. Very good. Ken, what do you got?
Oh, I was just going to make a comment. Either Word docs or PDFs are fine. If you can edit, you can make a PDF out of a Word file anyway and edit that if you want. So either one of those two files are probably better than Google Docs, in my opinion. So that's just my 2 cents.
Okay. Well, I mean, everybody, if we all put our 2 cents in, we can, get a cup of coffee, or tea or matcha or whatever.
Yeah, well, you wanted a survey, so we gave you one.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. I sent out a document that just consisted of maps. So I want to share that document now and go through why I think this is a good thing to do. Can everybody see the first Washington County map?
Yes.
Very good. So what I've done is, and I have to admit to a certain personal bias. Thank you, Virginia. But it's a very noble personal bias, mind you. So I've gone from the highest level depiction of the county down to what will be a lower level depiction of how we might divide up the CPOs with different boundaries. Since in looking at the OAICE quarterly report, the subject of boundaries figures in, and there's several different, there's a set of proposals as to how CPO boundaries might be made. And my personal feeling is that we need a set of different boundaries depending upon what the function is that we're trying to accomplish. So with that prelude in mind, we have here on the first map, the county, and you can see that the urbanized area of Washington County is about 15% of the full expanse. So we got a big county, and there's the source of the maps is on each page. And so the next map is the urban growth boundary, and then the urban growth boundary expansion history. So you can see how the urban growth boundary has grown and where.
Hey, can you zoom in a little bit on that? There you go. Thanks.
I think this green area on the East County is Damascus, which was a testament to how difficult it is to urbanize a large area. We have the Bethany area up here, which was probably the last area that the county itself is going to urbanize. Down here, south of Hillsborough, you have South Hillsborough, which is being urbanized developed under the auspices of Hillsborough. Moving ahead, looking for maps, these are the new county commissioner districts, and they include streets. And when I zoomed out, all the streets turned into a little black mass of lines. But you can see district number 1, district number 2 in the blue, 3 in the yellow, and 4, the great urban or the great rural portion of the county. So the proposals that OAICE is coming up with divide up the commissioner districts into one or more CPOs, which for the function of a county commissioner communicating with their constituents makes pretty good sense. From the point of view of constituents in like a 5-block area trying to represent something about their area, a CPO boundary of that size does not bring focus to a geographic area. So just that's a thought there. This is a map of the urban planning area agreement boundaries. And so, for instance, the dark green is the Beaverton city limits, and the light green is their urban planning agreement area. And there's agreements between the county and the cities for who owns responsibility for these areas. I don't know if this necessarily has any direct bearing on CPO boundaries, but I found it quite interesting to see how area inside the urban growth boundary is divvied up from an urban planning agreement between the county and the cities. The census divides up the county into census designated areas. And the labels that you see here are some of those terms, but each one of the little squares, each one of the little squares has its own designation. For instance, Bonnie Slope, my namesake, my email namesake, has its own boundary up here. So I'm a fan of using pre-existing boundaries as much as possible. And so, Mary, what do you got? Unmuted.
Yeah. I want to go back to the urban service agreement map. And I think one of the things that I think is pretty critical is the urban unincorporated areas, because we have our only representation is the county commissioner. And the areas inside the city have a different way of communicating their needs. But one of the things I keep going back to is, as we talk about the boundaries, shouldn't the first question be, what is
The function.
purpose
Yeah.
and function of the CPOs? And if it's to focus on land use, I think we need to go back to the community plan boundaries and
Well,
spend
as it
more
turns
time
out,
looking at those.
I found a map of the community plan. So
Oh, good.
So we'll go on. So the census designated areas are just an example of how somebody else has sliced and diced the county, but it includes the entire, the entire county. And there's Forest Grove and Cornelius and all of the great rural area. This is a set of 4 maps showing that none of the boundaries of the service districts really match. So the TVF&R and the Hillsborough fire and the Forest Grove fire and the Banks fire have divided up the county this way. Clean Water Services serves the area inside the urban growth boundary. So their boundary is essentially the urban growth boundary. Tualatin Valley Water District is depicted here in its tussle between the Hillsborough water provider and the Beaverton water provider. And then the little West Slope Water District is tucked in there. And then Park and Recreation Districts. And this is an example of how some cities use special service districts, because Beaverton uses the Tualatin Hills Park and Rec District as their park district. Hillsborough and Tigard provide their own park districts. So it's another example of what really ultimately amounts to a historical kind of random boundary. These are just here for reference more than anything. The goal 5 work, the significant natural resources, was done by all the cities in the Tualatin River watershed. And this is a map of the Tualatin River watershed with the sub-watershed boundaries. So let me bring it in here. So Dairy Creek, Gales Creek, Upper Tualatin, Middle Tualatin, Lower Tualatin, and Rock Creek are all smaller rivers that flow into the Tualatin. So back in 2006 or whenever it was that we did the goal 5 work, this is the basis of the watershed and fish and wildlife habitat analysis, which I think was very inspired. And here we have the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District, whose boundaries are the county boundaries. And you'll notice that there is a kind of loose mapping between the 5 zones of the Tualatin Soil and Water Conservation District and the components of the watershed, the individual sub-watershed boundaries. There is just kind of loosely related. And I'll send this out after the meeting. When CPO 12F reactivated a couple months ago, there was discussion about what the boundary should be. And since Forest Grove itself has a fairly active public participation program, 12F wanted to use CPO 12F as a way to address county level issues. And so when the pandemic hit, there was an emergency declaration for the area highlighted here in this map. And Brian Schimmel and Darcy Hanning and other 12F members have been working on housing issues, on food security issues, and youth development, all of which are county-wide issues. So this boundary, the boundary of 12F was left kind of assumed to be this boundary. So for the purposes of addressing homeless populations or just the housing situation, a large area like this, to me, makes sense. It might actually make, and I've been suggesting that the CPO 12F housing subcommittee be deputized by the CCI to make it a countywide subcommittee akin to the SNR subcommittee to address both county and city level homeless policies. So that's the Western Washington County Task Force, which became the 12F boundary sort of in loose terms. Here is a map of the Washington County Community Plan boundaries circa 1986. So each one of these has its own community plan. CPO 7 includes both the Bethany and the Sunset West community plan areas. CPO 1 includes the Cedar Hill, Cedar Mill area. CPO 3 includes the Raleigh Hills, I'll enlarge it, the Raleigh Hills Garden Home, and CPO 4M now is the down here. So this originally was the urban unincorporated area in 1986. Moving ahead to now, the Washington County land use districts show the land that Washington County is responsible for planning. And so by definition, this is the current state of the urban unincorporated area, all the colored areas. So if we go back to the map, you can see that up in here, there was unincorporated land, and now up in here, there's Beaverton and Hillsborough have claimed that land. So the urban unincorporated area has gotten smaller, but it has not gone away. And I, for one, could not imagine an annexation plan that would do more than just chip away at some of these. So here's our urban unincorporated area. I went to the city of Beaverton website, and they have a really fascinating map where you can select which boundaries you want to see on the map. And I selected 2 from the Beaverton City mapping tool, the Beaverton land use And then there's also zoning and other aspects. But one of the things that I found interesting was they have a natural resources map that shows and lists individual trees or groves of trees that are significant. And I would love to see Washington County have a map that showed individual trees. It was a horrifying sight to see a 600-year-old oak tree come down in my neighborhood because a developer wanted to build one more damn house on the lot. And then the map at the bottom came from the Metro mapping. No, it came from Beaverton, again, the neighborhood map, and it shows how Beaverton has divided itself up into neighborhoods. And this kind of division strikes me as a really good example of low-level geographic sense of place boundaries that we could use in the CPO system. Jim, what do you got?
Mary Lou had her hand up. I wanted to give her a chance to talk.
Sure.
She's muted.
There we go. Oh, I was just waving away because you, these are basically school district boundaries here.
No,
And not all of them are.
No, I'll get to school district boundaries shortly. These are.
But I mean, they're naming Vos, Highland, Sexton Mountain. You know, those are schools.
I agree, they are, but
Yeah.
they're, as you will see in subsequent maps, the school districts are even more finely grained than the Beaverton neighborhoods.
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. You will all have a copy of this document to look at. Here from the Metro map utility is all of the school districts in the county. And as I think about boundaries that already exist that could be useful for CPO boundaries, I keep coming back to school district boundaries, in part because the entire county is covered by some school district. So Hillsborough, as you can see right here, the light brown is the city limits, but this whole thing here is the Hillsborough School District. Beaverton is, it doesn't show up real well, but there's the light purple is the city limits, but the dark purple is the Beaverton School District, because I'm sure there's a state law that says that every part of a county has to be in some school district. So we have school districts which already exist. And, while the edges may move around a little bit as demographics shift, the bulk of the school district remains unchanged decade to decade. And here is the Beaverton School District elementary school attendance areas. And as Mary Lou pointed out, there is a rough mapping to the Beaverton neighborhoods, but there's more school district or elementary school attendance areas than there are neighborhoods. And I met Mary as we were both part of the parent-teacher organization at the Findlay Elementary School, and I learned that there is no force on earth greater advocating for children than elementary school mothers. And so it seems to me that if we wanted to have a really powerful sort of pre-existing base, that having a connection to elementary school attendance areas would be a really good way to kick off a geographic based system. And one of the advantages is that elementary schools feed into middle schools and high schools. And here is a map of the Beaverton School District high school attendance areas. So if you had a small geographic area, you could use a school district boundary to gather people together who are concerned about it. And if you had a larger regional issue, you could use high school attendance areas as the basis for contacting people. And that is the last of the maps that I have. I wanted to get to the point where we saw the Beaverton neighborhoods and how they were divided up, how the school districts represent the whole county, and how elementary schools really do a fine-grained geographic division of the terrain. And so I would welcome any thoughts or comments that you have on the subject. Yeah, Virginia. I'm going to ask you to unmute. Okay, Stan.
I'm sorry. I didn't get it. Did you send it to all of us or just to the people in the subcommittee?
No, I sent it to the whole CCI, but
Yeah, I didn't get it. You left
Okay.
me out.
no, I sent it to everybody, but it may have gotten buried. So I will.
Well, I just looked at everything that you've sent me in the last 6 weeks, so.
Okay,
You sent it to Fran because she sent it to me. So I know you sent it to her.
okay. So
Anyway,
now that we've gone through it, you can see what my thinking is in constructing this, and you'll all get a copy of this with the minutes.
well,
So-
as long, if I'm still recognized.
Yeah.
I think the question Mary asked is critical. He and I have a deep disagreement about the purpose of the CPO system. And I look at it as a way for all of our neighbors to connect with the county on all manner of issues. And she just wants it to be land use. And so if it's just land use, then I guess it should be a development-based boundary system. But I mean, the disparity in the representation that people in the UUAs get as opposed to what people in cities get. In other words, the ratio of people to reps is absurd. And I look at the CPO system as a way for us to have better representation.
Okay, that is, so the so representation by any measure is a lot more modest than in cities. Mary, what do you got?
Diluted would be a better word.
Yeah.
So to follow up on Virginia's comment, and I think it's really absolutely critical that we find out from our county commissioners what they see as the role of the CPO. Do they want it to be all things of community engagement, or is it a more narrow focus as defined in goal 1, where it is land use? And as volunteers, I don't believe we can do an adequate job to do all things involved with community engagement. I believe that whatever is decided, we need a land use focused geographic group that focuses on land use issues. But it's not for us to decide what the role of the CPO is. And before we start talking about boundaries, we absolutely must have an understanding of what the role of the CPO will be in the future.
And we will be working on that in the CPR subcommittee.
And I think looking at maps is premature until the decision is made about what the role is. Because if we're going to be looking at countywide issues like 12F, we can probably get by with 4 CPOs for the entire county. But if we're going to be looking at specific land use applications, if we're going to be looking at transportation issues, it's really difficult for volunteers to understand the county well enough to actually have cogent responses to potential changes to the, what land use applications or even transportation planning.
Very good, duly noted. What is the role of the CPO? That's a good question. One of the reasons I put the mapping thing up is one, I had it done. And the other is that it figures prominently into the information in the OAICE quarterly report coming up May 9th. And so as we, I mean, I would encourage CCI members to go to that document and go through it in advance of OAICE having a chance to present it. And I think that being able to respond to it, being able to provide input to OAICE in response to that quarterly report will make the input more germane. And the question is, what? I mean, who is everybody? Let's, get everybody possible involved in it. But Mary, what do you got? You're muted.
Being that we have more time now, between the time that the draft report has been released and the OAIC presentation for the quarter report in May, should we actually spend some time as CCI, and at this point it would have to be steering committee, to send in comments on the staff presentation?
I think that, yes, I think we should. I think that it would be most polite to let OAICE present and explain what they've written out. But by having studied it in advance, we would have a jump on constructing useful comments.
So you would suggest we wait until they actually do their presentation before we rip it apart?
I think we could do any manner of analyzing it and prepare a paper so that we can submit it after they do their presentation. Jim, what do you got?
Well, I have two things. One is not related, but early on, about 5 minutes ago, Stan Hausman had his hand up and I wanted to hear from him. I haven't heard from him all night. Stan, are you still there? You still have a question or comment?
I'm sorry for missing you.
And now Gretchen has her hand up.
I see that.
My other comment has to do with funding. I went to the volunteer appreciation event last week in Hillsborough, and I met the county's chief financial officer, and I heard how far in the red the county is, and then we heard some more from Catherine tonight. But I also asked, and Ms. Angie said that yes, the CPO funding is in the budget, but because there's such a wide range of things, I think we are going to need to advocate to keep it in. So I just wanted to throw that in. It's in, but we're going to need to advocate to keep it in, fully funded.
I agree. We need to be very diligent in paying attention to that. Gretchen, what do you have?
Okay, I found it very useful to see your mapping. I just want to raise one caveat in South County. Beaverton School District goes into parts of the city of Tigard. Hillsborough School District goes into parts of Beaverton. There's a mix-up of school districts down by King City, where you have 3 different school districts handling the, same basic territory. So I had a client, I've retired now, who had her property was in 3 different school districts. So that's a caveat, particularly in South County, that it's a mishmash. And it had to do with the fact that there was one kid, in this area and one kid over here. And well, it was easier not to send a bus for, District A. So It's
Yeah.
a mess.
I would not argue that school districts are perfect, but any means.
Oh, no, I just was giving you that little
Tidbit. Miss Mary.
tidbit.
Thanks. Ken, what do you have?
Yeah, just tacking on to what Mary was mentioning about, collectively, perhaps, I don't know if we have collectively put down on paper what each of our CPO issues are to bring to this committee. It seems like transportation and land use are probably 90% of the issues that we have in CPO 6. To a smaller extent, it might be public safety, but those issues are what we see in our CPO. So have we all collectively put that together and kind of push that out to say, hey, these are our concerns and this is where we should be focusing our attention on?
We have not done that as a group, but I think it would be very useful to do that. And it would also be very useful to have the rural CPOs bring their issues on, because we aren't concerned about the water table and quality of wells, but CPO 10 and 8, all the rural CPOs sure as heck are concerned about the water table. So what do you think? Should there be a CPO leader homework assignment that comes out of this to
I was just trying to get some collectively, get us all together so we're kind of unified on this.
Yeah. So how would you recommend we go about doing that?
Me? I guess I think it would be good, like you said, for each CPO to kind of, what are your top issues? And then we collectively rank those and we say, land use is our biggest concern, or transportation. I don't know what the other CPOs are seeing, but that's kind of where I guess my focus is for our CPO.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mary, what do you got?
So as long as we're creating lists, one of the things that I put together is a list of accomplishments of our CPOs over, and I think that gets lost. We have done a tremendous amount of work over the last 20 years. And I think if you're able to create that list, and as you have leaders retire, move on to other things, some of that stuff gets lost. And so I think it's really important to create lists of that information. In fact, I think we should annually be sitting down and reviewing the list and adding things to it. 2 homework assignments.
Yeah, okay. Darcy, what do you have?
Yeah, so I think one of the things I would like to put out there is that it would, from my point of view and coming from the Forest Grove area, and our primary CPO 12F basically has a subcommittee that is taking over the work that the emergency task force did for the last 3 years. I'd like to see a system of CPOs that allows for some flexibility. And so maybe the majority of the CPOs, their focus is on land use, and maybe the second highest focus is transportation. But I am uncomfortable with coming up with the priorities that speak for all CPOs. I think we should allow for some flexibility. So as Bruce pointed out earlier, in Forest Grove, and to some extent Cornelius, and points north, that emergency task force has those 3 other priorities that I don't hear talked about here, which is great.
What are the 3 priorities?
You mentioned them, Bruce. It's the dealing with the houselessness, dealing with food scarcity, and youth development services, or youth services. So those are very different, and that is just where that particular task force saw the biggest need over the last 3 years because of the pandemic. And as we move out of that, those needs have not gone away, and we still have a desire to have those addressed. So I'm just, I would just like to throw that out there, that maybe we need to look at a model that isn't one size fits all, both around the boundaries and the goals and priorities.
I agree. I don't think it would be possible to have an absolute list of the CPO system priorities, but having it list kind of the superset of all of the things that CPOs are concerned about would be really informative to the people planning the CPO program. So I agree that one size cannot fit all. Very good. Virginia, were you waving your hand around? Who else? Well, Gretchen.
I was just being a dog while I was off screen.
This is a thought that I've had for many, many years. And that is basically that the rural CPOs, their issues are so different. And they, us urbanite people, we kind of dominate what's going on in the process. And I'm wondering, yes, there are some issues that we have that are countywide, but it seems like apples and oranges in large part. Am I the only one that's feeling that disconnect?
Personally, I very much appreciate hearing from the rural CPOs and getting all of us to pay attention to their issues and see how they intersect with our issues. And I think we need to be respectful of them and not dismissive.
Oh, no, I wasn't saying that. I'm just saying, should they maybe mostly meet with themselves, their group, and we mostly meet with our group, and we have, okay.
So
well, that's what subcommittees are for.
Darcy, you got your hand up again.
It's one Washington County, as the chair likes to remind us.
One Washington County. Okay, Paul, what do you got?
I'm thinking that when you talk about urban versus rural, for rural areas, the services that are provided come from a different part of government or a different element of government than in urban areas. And out here where I'm in CPO 15, you've already mentioned water. Water is an issue. Fire protection, that's another issue. Being able to walk the roads where there are no sidewalks, and so the only thing that's going to protect you are being visible. So in my case, I'm always wearing a safety vest when I'm out on the road walking.
Idea.
That doesn't guarantee my safety, and wouldn't guarantee anybody else's safety. But if people are conscious that you're trying to do things in a safe manner, they will usually accommodate. And well, some of the issues I have with are just signs out in the rural area. Some of the signs make sense, some of them don't make any sense at all. And I've tried to convince the powers that be that they need to change.
Have you taken that up with ROMAC, the Rural Roads?
Not directly, no.
I think that having ROMAC and maybe ERMDAC, the urban roads, come in and present what they're doing would be an interesting thing for the CCI to be apprised of. Anybody have any thoughts on those two transportation committees coming in? Thumbs up, thumbs down, thumbs up, couple of, okay. Okay, very good. Thank you. Anything else?
When it comes to development applications, okay, out here, we don't see very many. There's very few. So the issues are really very narrow and very specific. I can see where that's more in the urban setting, it's more of a problem because you're going to have applications of all kinds, and trying to assess what's important or not important, how it's going to affect people specifically in a particular area is not obvious.
Okay, thanks. Virginia. And you're going to unmute, right?
We have about 15 minutes left of the meeting, and I really miss hearing from all the different CPOs about what they're up to and what their issues are and stuff.
Would you want to take it away for CPO 1?
Do you
Oh.
have time for the legislative report?
And that, we have other subcommittees that have reports.
Very good. Thank you.
How long is yours going to take?
Less
15
than 5
minutes?
minutes. Less than 5 minutes.
Okay, my timer is running.
When you're ready.
Go for it.
Oh, okay. Well, as most of you probably read or saw, 3001 went past the Senate and the governor has signed it. It includes a couple of little zinging things that probably won't affect us, but they've allowed a special assessment that people can go in and cite energy related things in rural land over the opposition of the neighborhood. LUBA has to, or LCDC has to do the rules for that. 2506 is coming out of the House. It's allowing residential care facilities, including mental health facilities, in all residential zones. And there are obviously folks have some concern about that. I just want to make sure you have the heads up on that. That's 2506 if I didn't mention the House bill number. 3569, that's the bill that provides right to housing, and it would step on the land use process and speed it up and avoid a lot of the rules that we all love to work with. It is still in the House in a working group. I don't know what the current status. LOC and the county organization are in opposition, but it's still alive. 3414 concerns me personally. It's going to affect more of the cities, but it would basically provide that any development application that asks for a variance would get it, and the burden of proof would go to the city or the county to come up with a good reason that the variance shouldn't be allowed. Not a good idea. That's 3414. 2095 photo radar, which has just been in a couple of cities. The bill's going through. It's going to be allowed everywhere now. Let's see. The broadband bill. I know that Paul's interested in this. It passed the House and went to the Senate. We're hoping it'll get out of the appropriate committee soon and get to the floor. Those of us who have some crunch, some connections, have been pushing to get it through for your rural folks to get better broadband. 2258. This is another one that would extend allowing industrial development in rural areas. And there'd even be a loan fund from the city to, the state to developers to do their planning, to fund their planning work. Yes, I'm not thrilled about it. And the bill that I've been just jumping up and down about, now I'm going to 1051. I think I talked about it ad nauseum last time, and it has come out of committee and is going to the House floor. So I'm keeping it short. See.
And 1051 deals with what?
I I'd have to go back to my notes. And I
Okay.
did a report for it's. I've been sick in bed, so I'm sorry, I'm a little fuzzy tonight. But I wanted to get some of these things are bills you should be checking up on because there's some scary things in terms of development where it shouldn't be happening of the industrial sort.
Well, industrial development requires utilities to be run, and that seems to me to be the fly in the ointment there.
Well, you see, that's part of the thing. This loan program from the state would help fund those kinds of things.
Well, some, but okay. So thank you. Let's get on. Virginia, do you want to do a CPO one? What's important to us? I'll say that CPO one did the first hybrid meeting,
Sure.
and the vote kits worked really well.
It certainly did. We held our meeting, our in-person meeting at Cedar Grove, which is an affordable housing apartment building in downtown Cedar Mill. And they have a big screen and all the facilities we could want. They were very accommodating about letting us in. And we actually got one of their residents to attend the meeting. We're going to do better outreach next time, probably make the woman that runs it printed a poster that I put together and posted it in the building. And if OEICE wants us to reach out to folks that don't normally attend CPO meetings, this is a really good way. And next month, I'm going to have it translated into Spanish as well and see if OEICE can provide a translator. I don't even remember what we talked about, but it was a very successful hybrid meeting. And apropos of that, OEICE provided us with several of these Go kits. And even if the CPOs are actively using them, I want to suggest that we make them also available to other community groups. Ours is currently at the Cedar Mill Library, and they are apprehensive about a process to check them out. But maybe it's something we could do, that we could take. Bruce's and my name is on the kit, and they didn't give me a deadline for bringing it back. So perhaps, we probably have to go through channels on this, but it seems like a service that OEICE and the CPO can encourage other community groups by making the kit available. However, I will say that we do need better instructions because both Bruce and I have a fairly technical background, and it took us about half an hour, 40 minutes to get everything hooked up right. And the instructions were there, but they were buried. And we did finally figure it out, but each situation will be slightly different with what you're plugging into. They had a big screen. So we had the Zoom meeting on the big screen. I was back in my office running the Zoom part of it, and Bruce was in the room. It worked great.
Yep.
It was the candidate forum.
It was a candidate forum. Thank you.
It was the candidate forum.
And
It was good.
and we had behavioral health come and talk and
That's
housing
right.
services.
Yes, thank you for reminding me.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just so excited that we pulled it off.
CPO 3. Got anything to share?
Well, actually, I do.
Okay.
We have several things that have been going on recently, but one of the big things, speaking environmentally, is that the Portland Golf Club has decided to dredge 5,500 cubic yards, not feet, 5,500 cubic yards of sludge from their junior lake, using that will be pumped to the southern edge of their property and put into fabric bags, et cetera, et cetera. These are next to houses. These are on the Fennel Creek Trail, which has, and I checked with THPRD that there are, in the worst of times in the winter, there is at least 7,000 people that cross that trek on the trail. And in the summertime, there's more than double that. And there has been no chemical testing, and it's a golf course. So obviously they are using chemicals to keep those lovely greens green, so the golfers can do their wanderings, chasing a little white ball. And so it's been kind of this interesting side, not quite a CPO thing, but we are quite aware of it, and we are watching and surmising what they're doing, and they have begun to ask or participate in our CPO meetings in advancing their concerns about this. And I have a small pond in my own backyard, and when I've cleaned it twice in the 15-16 years that I've been here, and I don't use chemicals, and it stinks to high heaven. I cannot imagine what the chemical part would add to that. So if any of you have any assistance that you can give to me to pass forward, I would highly appreciate that. Kudos to you all. Thank you.
Clean Water Services might have something to say.
As do the tree people, as do.
But tree people are a volunteer group. Clean Water Services.
Right, true. But here's the other thing, is that they are cutting down trees to make access to this nearby neighborhood, pathway and stuff like that. And it's going to drain back into Fano Creek. So everything they're pulling out that has, been residing and covered and all that, that is being draining back in volume now, all at one time, down Fano Creek. And that's, to me, is the biggest concern, is you're unearthing stuff that has been covered over decades, and now all of a sudden it's just going to be re-exposed. It's like the sewer pump station that we've dealt with for almost the entire time I've lived here, not once but twice, and the stuff breaks down, and all they do is just send it down a creek, and it's just what the damage is doing to the the birds and the bees and the lifestyle and all that. I mean, plus it runs down, and this is the most interesting thing about Fano Creek, and I'll end this with this, is it runs by so many schools. I want to say in parks, and there's well over a dozen of those. And you can see footprints. I went down and photographed all these areas, and you can see footprints of not just animals, which I would assume are pets also, but children. And they're bringing that stuff on them and into their homes. And this is just going to run down this same creek, doing what damage, who knows. So anyway, if anyone has additional suggestions, I would certainly appreciate it, so I can pass it on. Thank you.
Any of the CPO4 family of B, M, or K? Yowza.
A lot happening with CPO4M. We of course have the public safety briefings, but there's also a great big Willamette Water Supply District going through our CPO all the way into Beaverton. and TB Water Districts is putting in a new reservoir up on Taylor's Ferry Road. We've got the 217 auxiliary lanes, which is a 4 or 5 year project. And then we're kind of trying to resurrect National Night Out for the Metzger area. The big thing, of course, is Thursday, the Oregon Land Conservation Development Commission will have their ruling on Jill, our vice chair's request to have the enforcement order reissued to protect wildlife habitat. So that's a big deal. The city of Tigard is looking at revisioning Hall Boulevard. They want to take it over from the state, which is a good idea. But then there's this portion that's run by the county, and we don't know what's going to happen there. We have provided testimony to the House Ways and Means Committee on that. The city of Tigard is doing a charter review. Washington Square has a great big regional center project update where they're going to be expanding tremendously the Washington Square area. So we have a lot of things going on. And Stan, I'll give you a call and talk to you about our attorney, who's really good at land use.
Okay, any of the other 4K
Well,
or B?
4K has not had a meeting for this year yet. For the last 4 years, actually 6 years, the new area before it came in the urban growth boundary and all of the issues have been the primary issue at CPO meetings every single month. So that's what's been going on down here.
Thank you. CPO 6. May want to say anything?
Sure, yeah, we've, the last couple of meetings, we've been trying to get some representatives from Washington County to come through and present to our constituents. We had Planning Commission come through in March. We canceled the April meeting, but we're scheduling a transportation representative. We're not sure who that's going to be yet for hopefully in May. And the biggest events we still have going on are people are still kind of up in arms about the development that the city of Beaverton is doing on Cooper Mountain with infecting the natural habitat in some areas up there. So those are kind of our top issues for CPO 6.
I'm curious what the Planning Commission presentation focused on.
It was basically just procedural. It wasn't land use necessarily. It was, we had somebody come in and talk about the procedures for types of applications. And that was pretty much it.
Okay. So it was kind of the functioning.
Yeah, it was basically a summary of who the organizational structure is. You know, type 1, type 2 applications and type 3, those kind of things, and what the difference is between those applications. So we're trying to drill into different specialty sub areas of different specialties. And of course, transportation now all of a sudden is kind of a big thing because there's a lot of roads that are proposing to be changed in the CPO 6 area. So we're hearing from a lot of constituents that or their properties being affected. So we're trying to deal with that and address those issues for our people. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
CPO 7.
That would be me, but I actually have a question for Ken. Was that the planning department or was that the planning commission?
That was planning department. Yes.
Okay, that makes more sense. CPO 7 has no leadership and we have not been meeting. However, in April, the commissioners agreed, Pam Treese and Chair Harrington agreed to attend a meeting and they discussed the budget and the budget woes. They also talked about the ARPA funding that looks like it is going to be focused on HVAC improvements to county buildings as opposed to being focused on rescue for small businesses. Some controversy on that. And then they touched on the re-envisioning. So I don't know that it did a whole lot to encourage volunteers to step into the leadership roles. I didn't see any, yeah, exactly. Bruce was there.
Yeah. No, it was
and-
the recruiting was kind of an afterthought.
Yeah, which I think is unfortunate, but that's what we got. And it was an interesting meeting. We had maybe 15 people who attended, and it was live only, no virtual.
Okay. CPO 8. Anybody? 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Darcy.
CPO 12F will be meeting next week on the 26th. The primary agenda items are the county's time, place, manner ordinance and gathering stakeholder feedback. Is it the county or the city? I apologize. It might be the city. I think there's a city one and a county one. It's all very confusing to me because I'm still getting a handle on all of this. And then the other agenda item is what's being called is kind of like Highway 47 and Elm Street. The county is looking to purchase property there for a potential pod village, and the neighbors are in a bit of an uproar. And one of the things I learned was that pointing to the pod housing that's over by Wilco on the western edge of Hillsborough is not a great example of what pod housing can look like. So I think there'll be some work on some communications and also trying to get the county to be more in the loop as to what's happening locally for other possible pod villages in the greater Forest Grove area. And that's all I have.
Okay, let's see, we're doing fairly dignified running over. Anybody have any other activities going on you want to share? Wouldn't hurt my feelings if, yeah, Stan.
I hate to do this at this hour, and I know we're over, but we're always over. One of the things that I'm still doing Quake Up, earthquake preparedness, disaster.
In October, right?
No, pretty much every month. I'm still doing things. I work with Cedar Hills and a couple of other counties or areas in the county. And one of the things that we've sort of been talking about is being advocates of trying to get not just the county, but the state and the cities to be advocating earthquake preparedness, because there's a huge difference in $1 spent trying to upgrade or make improvements to your property is lessens 4 times the cost
Of fixing.
of demolishing and replacing a building. And it's how to approach that. How do we go about talking to the staff or the commissioners and that type of thing, since we have that avenue in that, not that they're going to do anything necessarily, but that they would promote this idea to residents, commercial buildings. They do it with schools, you know, the Beaverton and so forth and so on. And Portland, I don't know about Tigard school setup, but anyway, I mean, it's more of a, if they just would promote trying to upgrade the properties on a regular basis, like land use transportation does with promoting CPO. If they would just put it out there.
Perhaps a re-envisioned CPO system would be an entity that promotes earthquake emergency preparedness. just for example. thinking
Yes,
Off the top of my head.
something like that. I mean, I just want to put the forerunner out there. I would hope we could make this a topic a little bit later. I don't want to spend a lot of time right now, but it's just something that, why aren't we, I mean, we do all this other stuff.
Let's do some emergency preparedness work.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay,
Dan?
Gretchen.
Yes.
I would love it if you could get on the King City Council agenda and talk about this issue. When they rebuilt City Hall, they did it for earthquake, preparedness. But nothing else in the city, and nobody knows anything about this in King City. When I was on the Tiger Council, they had done a lot of stuff, and we're continuing to do it in the community. But maybe you could give the new council kind of a nudge that this is something that would be important, particularly when you're dealing with a population that are mostly seniors and
Yes.
disabled, et
Yes.
cetera. And we sit in an area that will turn into a slurry, is where the city is built.
Lovely.
Well, you know what I mean. The
I do.
The liquefaction fact. If you could contact and see if you could get on an agenda, I think that would be wonderful. And let me know when it's going to be, and I'll be there with bells on to support you.
Let's do it the other way. Please set it up for me.
I'll try.
Try. And
Yeah.
and then at least if you get it started, I will follow up.
Okay.
And
Thank
anyone
you,
else
Stan.
out there?
Thank you, Stan.
I've been all over the place. I'm happy to present.
I bow to your expertise.
Aye.
Okay.
When
You
I
guys
was
can
on the
have
water
your rub noses
consortium,
later.
they talked about this stuff
Okay,
and scared the
okay.
heck out of me. But
Okay.
anyway,
So,
I'm done.
Mary, good. Mary,
I move that we adjourn.
Paul, you want to say anything for the good of the order before we adjourn?
I just wanted to comment to Stan, when it comes to the, where the effluent goes and the smell and that kind of thing. It seems to me that, one of those things that OSU has the ability to do is an assessment of soil around you. And if there are certain things that are wrong with the soil, they could be contributing to the smell. But farmers have long used soil sweeteners to help with the smell. And the items that they usually apply is dolomite to the soil as a sweetener. So just something to consider. And when it comes to the emergency preparedness, the one things that we've talked about in the past is having a neighborhood inventory of things that are theirs, because during a earthquake, chances are all your access points to go to other places will be disrupted completely. So your ability to adapt is going to be entirely centered in where you are and the people around you. So the critical thing is an inventory of what's already there when it comes to people's skills, people's materials, and so forth.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're close to dismissing the class. Jim, what do you got?
Unmute.
There's a move to adjourn the meeting.
I second Mary's motion to adjourn and call the question.
Anybody opposed?
Thank you.
I think we just had a very successful meeting. Thank you all. Emergency preparedness will come on the agenda at some point. And I thank you all for your attention, your diligence, your passion, and your intelligence. Until we meet again, adios.
Adios.
Oh,
Oh,
shoot.
oh.